Okay, so in this recording, I will talk about the psychological theory of meaning. This is our second theory of meaning in our course, Philosophy of Language. Now, the interesting thing about the psychological theory, which you have heard about before, okay? So you're familiar with this, nakita na natin ito, magsimula nung simula. Pero ngayon, handa na tayong talakayan yung mas mga maraming detalye. So the interesting thing about the psychological theory of meaning is that it is sometimes called the speech act theory. So the phrase speech act theory comes from an insight that says we do things with words. So we perform actions with words. When we say things, we often or always even, are doing something at the same time. So here in this comic strip that I'm showing you, we have the same sentence. Band practice, my house, 6 to 8. So that's a sentence. In the first three boxes of the comic strip, we have the action of reminding. So there's this, he seems to be a young man, and seems to be talking to his bandmates, so the other people who are with him in the band. And when he says, band practice my house, 6 to 8, they respond by saying, thanks for the reminder. Right? But in the last box, we have the exact same sentence uttered by a different speaker, the father of the young man, reminding his bandmates about practice. The father tells his friends, who are probably his nearby neighbors also, and the words are the same, the sentence is the same, the speaker is different, they're talking about the same thing. So the referent of band is the same band, the referent of my house, which house it is, and the 6 to 9 it's the same, it's all the same, but the action is different. Right? So I know that this joke is no longer funny after we have explained it, but my purpose in showing you the comic strip is not to make a joke, but to explain what speech act theory means, what the psychological theory means, what it means to say that we do things with words. So in the last box, the older men are saying to each other, thanks for the warning. Because to them, it's not a reminder, it's a warning. It's going to be noisy at the particular house in their street. It's going to last for 2 hours. And they've probably been through this experience before. And they know that they have to do certain things to cope. Maybe they'll wear earplugs. Maybe they'll schedule a trip so they're not at home during that time period, etc. Right? So here's the thing. The insight here is that speaker meaning is the crucial thing in psychological theory, right? So we already know that, but speaker meaning is inseparable from what particular speakers do with the words they utter, right? So that's very basic. Now, let's go to a very important topic, which is the difference between use under the use theory of meaning and speaker meaning. So the foundational insight in use theory of meaning is that words are like tokens in a game, and we use words in the sense that in the same way that we use tokens to make certain moves, like in chess or in a game of Go or checkers or whatever the game is, right? Now, there is some difficulty, or there is a challenge in differentiating use theory from psychological theory, because the two theories share certain things, certain important things. So I'll go over the things that use theory and psychological theory have in common. So what's the difference between using a linguistic expression or even a sentence in the same way that you are making a move in a game? What's the difference between that on the one hand and saying that the meaning of a linguistic expression or a sentence is tied to speaker meaning, right? So what's the difference? So first, let's acknowledge that it's not as easy, or there may be reason for confusion because the two theories overlap, right? In what do they overlap? After I have enumerated where they overlap, I will talk about the main difference, right? So both use theory and psychological theory. So here on this slide, speaker meaning is the foundation of psychological theory, right? Both the use theory and the psychological theory reject entity theories in general and proposition theory in particular, right? So they both reject approaches that look for a something that linguistic meaning corresponds to, right? So they share that in common. Second point is that use theory and psychological theory reject the tendency most clearly exemplified in Bertrand Russell to analyze sentences without looking at particular contexts in which the sentence is uttered. So if we look at that sentence in the previous slide where we had the comic strip, band practice my house 6 to 8, Russell is going to take that sentence, write it on a blackboard, and then analyze with respect to descriptions, like how can we refer to what is being singled out by the word band in that sentence and what is being singled out. So there's multiple singular terms in that sense. There are two, band, because there is an implicit reference to our band or this band will have a practice. And the band probably has a name, but it's not mentioned in the comic strip. But it's singling out one particular band, right? One particular musical group. And then it's also singling out one particular house, my house, right? So it's the same house of the young guy, probably someone in high school, and the same house that his father lives in. So Russell will look at that and try to quantify there's at least one band, right? That and so on and so forth, like that kind of analysis that we've seen before. And Russell will not look at the different speakers or the different contexts and the different responses. He will not do that. Also, the aspiration that Russell had in analyzing sentences like this is to work toward an ideal language and to get rid of all the confusing vaguenesses in the way that people use words, right? So the ambition of logical atomism is to come up with an ideal language. So use theory and psychological theory reject analyses of sentences where you don't even look at the context where the sentence, where, when, etc. the sentence is uttered. And there's a rejection of the project of building an ideal language. Instead, there is emphasis on ordinary language. So there's a family of approaches or a broad clustering of approaches that's referred to historically as ordinary language philosophy. And both use theory and psychological theory fall under ordinary language. But that does not mean the two theories are the same. So it's very, very important to understand the fine-grained details also. Hindi pwedeng puro broad strokes lang. So dapat maintindihan natin. So ano yung pagkakaiba? So nandun na tayo sa last bullet point on this slide. Where use theorists focus on how social conventions or language games allow us to make certain moves with words, psychological theorists focus on speaker meaning, right? So yung use theory, alam natin yung language game idea, rule-governed social activities, rule-governed practice that involves linguistic expressions. Yun yung crucial idea doon. Dito sa psychological theory, ang pinag-iikutan ng lahat ay speaker meaning. Speaker meaning. Yung speaker meaning, may kinalaman yun sa mental states ng speakers. So, it's a psychological theory because it looks at the mental states of speakers, but not in isolation. It looks at the mental states of speakers and how a speaker wishes to produce a related mental state in their audience through the use of words, through the use of linguistic expressions. So I'm going to explain what speaker meaning means, and I recommend that you read Lycan closely for how he explains the difference between ideational theory and psychological theory of meaning. Pero yung ideational theory kasi malinaw na sa mental state ng iisang tao lang ang pinag-uusapan. Right. Okay. So speaker meaning already involves several variables. So here's another comic strip from PhD Comics. So this is one of the standard characters, or the main characters in that story. Cecilia is a graduate student in STEM. So it's non-specific, so it doesn't say what her discipline is. And she's a PhD student, so her job, she is employed by a university where she gets a salary, not very high, that covers her living expenses, or most of it. And she works at the lab of her thesis or dissertation supervisor. So Cecilia gets an email from Professor Jones. Professor Jones says, Cecilia, can you stop by my office? We need to talk. So the sentence is, we need to talk, right? So the speaker meaning is what the speaker, in uttering a given sentence on a particular occasion, intends to convey to a hearer. So here, what's interesting about this example is that we have a sentence, we need to talk. The speaker, or the writer in this case, but we'll just use speaker as a shortcut because it's the same for our purposes. So the speaker is Professor Jones, and the audience is Cecilia, right? So the hearer or the reader is Cecilia. And what she's trying to figure out is the speaker meaning of the person who sent her an email, right? And she actually already has ideas on what it means, right? So I have underlined all the variables relating, or all the variables that are important for the concept of speaker meaning. So when we say speaker meaning, we don't just mean the mental state of the speaker, right? So we're actually talking about the intention of the speaker in uttering a given sentence in a particular occasion to convey to a hearer, right? So Cecilia, from previous experience from previous interactions with Professor Jones, she has narrowed down 3 possibilities. We need to talk. The speaker meaning can be, you're fired, meaning I'm no longer having you in my lab. You lose funding. You can no longer continue as a PhD student. We'll cut off your salary and stop paying your school fees. B is, I forgot what your project is about. Can you remind me? So I forgot what your thesis is about, your dissertation is about. Can you remind me? And C is, I have a trivial request that I'm too embarrassed to write in an email. Right? And this is supposed to be funny because she actually guessed the speaker meaning. She was actually able to figure it out. Even before she went to his office to talk to him, she already figured out that this is a possibility. And he just needed to change the logo on something, probably not even something related to her dissertation or their project in their lab, whatever it is that they're doing. So what matters here is that speaker meaning is not about looking at the inner life of the speaker. So speaker meaning is about what the speaker projects outside of them. So it's the intention that they have in uttering a given sentence on a particular occasion, right? So this is indexed in a particular context, looking specifically at a particular speaker, a particular sentence, a particular occasion, time and place, and what the message to the hearer is. So there is successful communication. So this is also what Lycan talks about. The psychological theory is about communication. So how does it happen that it's like one speaker broadcasts or says something, and then the hearer gets the message? How does that happen? So speaker meaning in the psychological theory explains that, right? It's because the speaker has a specific intention in a particular occasion that when they say a particular sentence, this is what they want their hearer to think, right? So that's the basic idea. So the psychological theory tells you how human communication works, right? So it boils down linguistic meaning to the way that human communication works, right? So we have this Gricean analysis of meaning on Lycan, page 89. What's critical here is to look at the grouping. Kasi may pinag-uusapan si Lycan na first stage, tas second stage. Tapos sabi niya na mas mahirap yung second stage. Tapos baka nalilito kayo. Ang first stage ay itong number 1. S, ito yung speaker, uttered X, X yung linguistic expression. Usually it's a complete sentence, intending that A is this audience, form the belief that P, right? Kaya iba pa yung P dun sa X kasi madalas, hindi lang minsan, kung ano yung sinabi ng speaker, hindi yun yung literal meaning na gusto niyang maiparating dun sa nakikinig sa kanya. Sa wika natin, sa Filipino, medyo malinaw na nangyayari yung gano'n kasi meron tayong tinatawag na nagpaparinig. Yung nagpaparinig, yung gusto niyang malaman ng nakikinig sa kanya, hindi talaga yun yung literal na nilalaman ng mga salitang binigkas niya. Pero meron siyang intention na gusto ko makarating sa'yo na may reklamo ako or may tampo ako or whatever it is, right? So the second stage is the further specification. So 2 and 3 is the second stage. Tapos dito nagkakaproblema yung theory ni Grice. So S further intended that A recognized S's original intention, right? So there is a it's not just that the speaker has an intention to communicate something. The speaker also has an intention that the intention be recognized. So parang 2 layers, di ba? Tapos number 3, S still further intends that A form the belief that P, at least partly on the basis of recognizing that original intention. So kaya naiintindihan ni A kung ano yung sinasabi niya kasi batay nga dun sa original intention. Okay? So dito nagkakaproblema. So ito yung theory in a nutshell. So linguistic theories are supposed to have something like this, like a formula type definition that can reduce everything to maybe 3 to 5 statements. And then, of course, there's a lot of discussion on what those variables mean, what happens when it's not very clear, when there is the existence of that particular variable. Halimbawa, paano kung walang audience nakalagay dito, intending that A, paano kung walang A, paano kung walang audience, yung mga ganon. So the challenge usually is to have something so compact and clear like this, but also to have the ability to cash out. That's the phrase that philosophers usually use rather, to refer to the way that they expand on these ideas so that important objections are met, so that clarifications are made, etc. Okay? So ito yung Gricean analysis of meaning. Ito yung nakalagay kay Lycan, page 88 as G1, G2, and G3. Yung G2 and G3, yung number 2 and number 3 dito sa slide ko, iyan ang stage 2. Okay? Babasahin ko tong bahagi ng Lycan, page 88, kasi may mahalagang sinasabi ni dito. Okay. So, Lycan says, near the bottom of page 88, as advertised, the core of speaker meaning is an intention. But other mental states figure in the analysis as well. Namely, the mental states or the intended future belief of yours and the intended state of recognition. It may be thought implausible that an ordinary speaker could have such complex intentions at all, much less have them every single time she or he makes an assertion. But Grice is not supposing that these communicative intentions are conscious or before the mind. Indeed, in daily life, most of our intentions are only tacit. You're only occasionally aware of them. So too, you usually say things without explicitly thinking about it. And often, you speak or mean things that you are unaware of. So, hindi naman ibig sabihin ng speaker meaning na merong speaker meaning, hindi ibig sabihin ni Grice at ng mga psychological theorists na kailangan iniisip ni speaker palagi, ito yung intention ko. Madalas, taken for granted na yon or nangyayari sa mental processing na hindi directly aware yung speaker. Kasi masyadong automatic, napakadalas nangyayari. Pero kung gusto natin gawin yung philosophical analysis or si speaker mismo, gusto niyang balikan, okay, ano ba yung speaker attention? Maaari niyang tukuyin gamit itong mga detalye ng psychological theory. Okay. So I'll talk about the objections, some of them fairly quickly because I think Lycan discusses them well. But I just want to talk briefly about something to do with why objections are discussed and what the difference is between an objection and an obstacle. So an objection is, so usually mas madaling intindihin yung theory. Kaya ganito yung format na ginawa ni Lycan. Kasi madalas, mas madaling unawain kung ano yung sinasabi nung theory sa pamamagitan ng pagtingin kung paano tumututol doon yung mga ibang palaisip o pilosopo. Halimbawa, okay, kung hindi ako psychological theorist, narinig ko yung sinasabi ni Grice, sa maisip ko, teka muna, hindi naman palagi may audience, minsan nagsasalita ako mag-isa. Parang ganun. So, Lycan confesses to this himself. So it's supposed to show that there's a problem with the theory because it seems to be requiring something that is not present all the time. So yung obstacle naman, so objection, ito ay yung mga bagay na naiisip ng mga tao na iba yung theory nila o kaya hindi sila sigurado kung tinatanggap ba nila tong psychological theory na ito. So doon ang gagaling yung objection. Mamaya babanggitin ko kung saan nanggagaling yung mga obstacle. Okay, so ito yung unang objection. So nakita natin inilatag yung 3 points, di ba? Yung G1, 1, 2, 3. So ang tanong, okay, nire-require mo ba yan? Paano may mga pagkakataon na malinaw na walang audience? Halimbawa, nagsasalita ka mag-isa mga tao. So anong, wala akong intention to, if I talk to myself, as I'm almost sure almost all of you do, it's not our intention to produce a certain belief that P in an audience kasi nga walang audience. Nagsasalita tayo mag-isa. So, paano yon? Ibig sabihin, may mga cases na may linguistic meaning doon kasi makahulugan pa rin naman yung mga sinasabi natin kahit mag-isa tayo sa loob ng kuweba. Pero hindi kayang ipaliwanag ng psychological theory. So, ganun yung takbo ng objection. Okay, so mabilis lang yung pagtalakay ko nito dahil natalakay naman ni Lycan at babalikan ko yan maya-mayang konti. Objection 2, right? So, ito naman this is the part about so minsan may audience, pero hindi intention ng speaker or writer na magkaroon ng certain belief yung audience. Ang pangunahing halimbawa dito, yung mga estudyante na nagsasagot ng test. So, pagka halimbawa, binigyan ko kayo ng exam, tapos, so explain the psychological theory of meaning. What does Grice say about the objection that speakers, that sometimes there's a speaker uttering a linguistic expression, but so may S, may X, kasi may linguistic expression, may speaker, may sinabi siya, pero walang A, walang audience. So anong sagot ni Grice doon? Pagka sinulat nyo sa papel nyo, yung sagot at tama yung sagot nyo, hindi nyo speaker intention na yun yung paniwalaan ko. Kasi actually, alam nyo naman na alam ko yung tamang sagot. Actually, in that case, the speaker intention seems to be Actually, kaya pa rin paliwanag ni Grice ito eh. Maybe the speaker intention is to produce the belief in the teacher that this particular student understands an important point about the theory. Pero parang hindi direct or very easy yung fit doon sa different parts, yung 1, 2, 3 na nakita natin. So parang ganyan yung objection 2. So ito yung possible replies. Tinalakay na rin ni Lycan ang modus operandi or way of proceeding naman ni Lycan ay magbigay ng initial moves doon sa objection. Kasi yung mga objection na binibigay niya, tinatalakay niya, merong number, kaya niya yan binibigay kasi pag tinignan natin yung literature sa mga libro, sa mga sinulat ni journal articles, yan yung pinag-uusapan. So may move and counter move yan. One moves on the side of the psychological theorist, counter moves or reinforcing or reformulation of the objection on the part of people who think there's something wrong with the psychological theory and are trying to show that there are very clear and strong reasons for rejecting this particular theory of meaning. So si Schiffer ay pro-Grice, pro-psychological theory, right? So pwedeng sabihin ng psychological theorist, teka, sinabi lang naman na may S at may A. Pero hindi naman sinabi na kailangan hiwalay na tao yon. So may pagkakataon na yung speaker ay ang sarili niyang audience. Pero magiging problema ba yon? Pag-isipan niyo kung magiging problema yon, right? So si Grice naman meron siyang reference to activated belief and unconscious and tacit ones. So I leave it to you to read up on that in Lycan. I'm sure you noticed that Lycan sometimes has 2 to 3 sentences, pero kailangan basahin ng mabagal pa ulit-ulit kasi malaman. Maraming po pwedeng maisip habang binabasa yun ng maayos. Okay? Yung isa pang possibility, pwedeng, so sasabi ni Schiffer, pwede, mas madaling intindihin dito yung una at saka pangatlong possible reply. Yung reply ni Schiffer, pwede naman na yung audience at yung speaker ay one and the same person. Tapos sinasabi naman ni Grice sa pangatlo, pwede naman na yung audience ay hypothetical. Kung may audience ako, nung nagkakataon na kinakausap ko yung sarili ko, ito yung gusto kong paniwalaan niya. So, pwedeng hypothetical yung audience, pwedeng hindi actual. Right? So, yun yung reply to the objection. So, again, when there's an objection and there's a reply, our job is to try to adjudicate or figure out which side is making sense and why, and how the philosophical conversation is moving forward. Okay? Sorry. Next is objections 3 and 4. Ito naman ay, ang objection dito, yung objection 3, it seems to show that Grice's theory proves too much or is too liberal. It allows noises that technically don't count as language to be meaningful. So itong si George ay mayabang na philosophy student pa siya. Mayabang siya eh. Parang tinitignan niya na the test that's given to him is just for stupid people. So he means to show his contempt by saying, ugh, blog. And on the psychological theory of meaning, meaningful yun. Kasi ang speaker intention niya ay sabihin na he wants the audience to believe that this is stupid. This test is stupid. So parang ganun yung sinasabi niya. He means to show his contempt to the whole process. So technically, meaningful yun. Pero merong pagkakaiba yung blag sa sentence na this is stupid. Kasi may dictionary meaning yung this is stupid. Yung all the words in that sentence. Ito wala tong dictionary meaning. Hindi to, gusto nating sabihin na hindi to linguistically meaningful. So, ang sinasabi, teka muna, masyado yata maraming kino-cover yung psychological theory. Sumusobra siya dun sa kailangan niyang ipaliwanag. So, ganun yung objection 3. Yung objection 4 naman, ito yung captured American soldier who wants to convince the Italians that he's actually German. So, this is during World War II. So hindi naman siya marunong mag-German, tapos meron siyang nag-iisa yata na German sentence na alam. Kaya yun yung sinasabi niya. Kasi gusto niya yung isipin ng Italian soldiers na German siya para wag siyang gawing prisoner of war. So dito naman ang speaker meaning ay napaka-komplikado kasi ang gusto niyang paniwalaan ng Italians ay this man is a German officer. Yun yung gusto niyang paniwalaan. Pero parang halos walang kinalaman yung sinabi niya. Pero ito, linguistically meaningful ito. These are German words and they mean something, right? But it has very little or nothing to do with the speaker meaning. So it's not clear how this particular thing works. So kung psychological theorist ka, at maraming ang mga psychological theorists na gumawa nito, nag-iisip sila ng tugon sa mga objection na ito. Sa tinatalakay din ni Lycan, yung mga sagot na yon. So pagka tinignan mo yung page 95, halimbawa, nandun yung idea na batay sa structured and unstructured utterance. So tignan nyo mabuti kung ano yung ibig sabihin nun. So yun yung task nyo sa pagbabasa. Tapos paano yun nakakatulong sa pagtugon dito sa objections na ito at kung sumasapat ba. Right? So these are things that you have to analyze for yourself. Okay. Now, lipat na tayo dito sa obstacles. The obstacles are different from the objection in that the obstacles are coming from the meaning facts. Yung obstacles ay nanggagaling sa merong mga particular meaning facts na mas mahirap para sa particular theory, in this case, psychological theory, na mas mahirap para sa psychological theory na ipaliwanag. May mga bagay na mas madali para dun sa theory na ipaliwanag, may mga bagay na mas mahirap. Yung mga mas mahirap, yun ay tinatawag na obstacles. So, yun ang ibig sabihin ng obstacle, right? So itong obstacle 1, medyo malapit siya dun sa soldier, si George ba yun? Hindi pa pala siya soldier. Who wants to express contempt about a test that he's being given and he says, meaningless word, blag. So ito naman, merong isang tao na kung anong ginawa sa utak niya, inoperahan, nilagyan ng electrodes, nilagyan ng mga kung ano-ano. Tapos meron siyang mga sinasabi na again, hindi linguistically meaningful. But then it seems like he can explain it later when we ask him. So parang ganun yung objection eh. Right? Etong tanong sa ibaba ng slide na salagot ko na yan, kung ano yung difference between an objection and an obstacle. So ito yung mas mahirap para sa speaker, para sa psychological theory na ipaliwanag. If you ask me, actually, the obstacle 1 maybe is not that serious because obstacle 1 is based on a highly unusual example. It's a philosopher's example. And there are reasons that philosophers construct and discuss non-lifelike examples. One of the reasons is to show that the theory does not cover all the things or does not explain all the things that it's supposed to explain. So that's what's happening in this case. Yung obstacles 2 and 3, I think this is something that these are more serious. So ito yung may kinalaman sa meaning facts, right? So una, dun sa psychological theory, para bagang nagkakaroon lang ng linguistic meaning pag may particular speaker na may binigkas siya na pangusap. Pero may mga pangusap na wala pang bumibigkas, pwedeng wala pang bumibigkas nun. Madali mag-isip ng example, lalo na yung mga fantastic claims. You almost just create a word salad. You can use like different nouns and different verbs, and you come up with something that's completely new, right? And it is meaningful, right? So walang particular speaker intention. Ibig sabihin ba nun hindi meaningful? We want an answer that says, yes, those sentences that have never been uttered by any speaker in any particular context to any audience, those can still be meaningful. But it looks like it's very difficult for the psychological theory to explain why. Difficult or even impossible. Kasi nga sa kanila, ang linguistic meaning ay tied to yung merong particular subject, may particular X, yung linguistic utterance, may particular audience, and merong particular P, the belief that you want the audience to have, right? So paano kung wala yung, hindi satisfied yung lahat, walang speaker, wala no, pero may mga pangungusap kagaya nito, na wala namang bumibigkas or kaya natin lahat na mag-isip ng mga bago at kakaibang pangungusap na ganyan. So, ano ibig sabihin nun? Hindi makahulugan, pero makahulugan naman. Meron naman tayong parang pag binasa natin, meron naman tayong naiintindihan. Right? Now, Simon Blackburn, a British philosopher who works in the areas of metaethics and philosophy of language, has an idea, right? So his idea is brought up by Lacan, and may textbook na isinulat itong si Simon Blackburn. The title of the book now escapes me. I may write the name of the book in your module if you want to look it up. But anyway, Simon Blackburn's idea goes something like this. S means that P, so yung subject, ito yung P, yung belief that you want the audience to have, when it is either a conventional regularity or the consequence of a conventional regularity that one who utters P with assertive force may be regarding as having displayed that P. Right? So kung merong convention, magkakaintindihan pa rin tayo. The relevant sense of being regarded depends on social facts that's independent of particular speaker's intention. Now, this is a very critical idea. So, ibig sabihin, wala pang kahit na sinong bumibigkas sa mga pangungusap na iyon. So, ito na naman, galing tayo dito sa obstacles 2 and 3, right? So, wildly novel sentences, not uttered by anybody at all, paano natin pwedeng ipaliwanag na meaningful pa rin yun? Sinasabi ni Blackburn, kasi merong social conventions, regularity that establish certain regularity so that we know that certain moves can be made. And when I use that word moves, I hope you're beginning to get the idea that Blackburn's point here is very interesting, one, but two, it's coming from the direction of use theory. So, doon sa obstacles, nakikita natin na may paraan na pagtugon o paglampas doon sa obstacles na iyon na mapupunta yung psychological theory sa use theory. So, ito yung idea ni Blackburn allows, I can tell you that Blackburn is a use theorist. That's his preferred theory of meaning. Now, so he would make suggestions to cover the obstacles in a way that allows some or most of the insights of the psychological theory to be absorbed in the use theory. So this is what Blackburn is doing. So there, I'm just pointing that out because I think Lacan does not explicitly state as much. Okay. So ito naman yung obstacle 4. Sentences are often used to say something different from their literal meanings. This is very common in sarcasm, but not just in sarcasm. This is very common in jokes. Hindi yung ibig mong sabihin yung sinasabi mo, pero nakukuha ng audience kaya nakakatawa. Pwede rin mangyari kagaya nitong code during the attack of Pearl Harbor. Na pag-alaman, maraming taon pagkatapos ng World War II, hindi ko alam kung gaano karaming taon, na ang code pala nung Japanese ay East Wind Rain. That's what the Japanese characters or spoken words meant. That's how it can be translated to English. Pero ang speaker intention doon ay, speaker meaning doon ay, it's time to bomb Pearl Harbor. Right? So, itong obstacle 4, mas mahirap, connected din siya dun sa previous obstacle kasi parang ano yung kinalaman ng linguistic expression, yung X, doon sa formula, doon sa P. minsan walang kinalaman, pero malinaw yung speaker intention. Dito, sa Pearl Harbor example, malinaw yung speaker intention at saka message received on the end of the audience kasi it's a private code that they previously agreed on. They had probably had long conversations about what east wind rain means, right? And they were broadcasting that over a channel that the Americans can monitor. So, kaya ganun. Kaya nagpapanggap na walang kinalaman sa masamang mangyayari. Tapos napag-alaman nga, pagkatapos na yun pala yung signal, right? So, it looks like the psychological theory of meaning cannot explain this, right? So in the next few modules and in the next chapters of Lacan's book, he will now show how his favored theory of meaning, so Lacan's preferred theory of meaning is the truth condition theory, is able to explain that he will show that the truth condition theory of meaning, pakita ni Lacan lalo na, kung paano na ipapaliwanag ng truth condition ito, yung obstacles 2 and 3. Okay. Tapos, makikita rin natin yung iba pang, so ibig sabihin ba nito, ibabasura na lahat yung sinasabi ng psychological theory? Hindi. Ang gusto ng mga truth condition theorists at saka ng mga iba na hindi namang kumbinsido na tama itong psychological theory, ang gusto lang sabihin, may insight dyan eh. Merong matinong sinasabi. Pero, iba yung gagawin natin. Hindi natin tatanggapin yung psychological theory of meaning. Instead, we will recognize that there are many ways to study language. We can study language in terms of semantics, which has something to do with the literal meaning of linguistic expressions. And often we can tie that to truth conditions, and we'll explain what that means later. But also, there is a study of language that's called pragmatics, which is precisely how we do things, we perform actions with words, like when we make a promise, when we make a threat, when we declare something. Like sometimes I do that in class. I hereby declare that the midterm exam is moved to a certain date. So when I said that, I was in a position to make that call, and you got the message. Parang ganon. So merong area pa rin ng ganon. So ganon ang mangyayari. Sa mga posibleng topic para sa inyong final paper, napaka-relevant ng ilang mga bahagi nitong psychological theory. Doon sa silencing, at saka doon sa gender and race. So there, sometimes we can also do things with words that are morally questionable or even morally bad. Sometimes words are used as slurs. So SLUR, slurs. So may mga salita na insulto ang ibig sabihin. Na pagka binigkas iyon, ang speaker meaning ay malaman ng audience na mababa ang tingin sa kanya. So ginagawa yun sa kababaihan, ginagawa yun sa mga taong hindi puti, ginagawa yun sa mga queer folk, trans folk, and so on. So this is something that elements of the psychological theory can help us explain. So this is all by way of saying that learning a theory is not about saying, okay, this theory is completely true. We are trying to learn the theory in terms of A, what it's saying, B, what objections to it are, and C, what we can learn from it and how we can use elements of it, even though we may not be completely convinced that it's all true. Okay, so I will end the recording here, and we shall see each other in the classroom again on the following Wednesday.